Prime Minister Mark Carney is in The Hague this morning for the NATO summit, today after signing a new security and defense pact with the European Union.
Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada's new agreement with the European Union is a, quote, historic step forward in our relationship with the alliance.
As the Prime Minister warned of a new imperialism threatening the world, Mark Carney says more military spending is needed to help protect Canada from multiplying threats.
For years, Canadians have heard the same line repeated in different forms. The government's most basic responsibility is to protect the country and the people who live in it. That promise has always existed in speeches and policy papers. This week, it moved from words into action in a way few expected. The Prime Minister stood before the country and made a clear commitment. Canada will defend Canadians, not in abstract terms and not at some distant point in the future. But now, by the end of March, defense spending will rise by an additional $8.7 billion. At the same time, Ottawa confirmed that Canada will finally meet NATO's long-standing target of spending 2% of GDP on defense. Not years from now, but this year, half a decade ahead of schedule. For defense contractors, military planners, and allies watching closely, that alone was a major signal. But that was only the surface. While headlines focused on spending numbers and procurement announcements, something far more consequential was taking shape quietly out of public view. In meeting rooms in Brussels and inside sealed briefing folders in Ottawa, a decision was forming that would fundamentally change Canada's role in global security. When that decision finally became public, the scale of it stunned even seasoned observers. Canada had been invited into SAFE, Europe's new security and defense action framework. This is not a minor program or a symbolic partnership. SAFE is a massive, multi-hundred billion euro defense initiative designed to reshape how Europe arms itself for a far more dangerous world. Until now, membership was assumed to be strictly European, no exceptions, no outsiders. And yet, Canada was not only invited in, it was the only non-European country allowed to join. Not the United Kingdom, despite its long and deep military ties to the continent. Not Australia, one of the EU's closest partners in the Pacific. Not even the United States, Europe's longest and most powerful ally. All of them were left outside the door. Canada stepped through it. This was not a trade deal, and it was not a gesture of goodwill. It was a strategic decision by Europe to reorient how it plans its own defense. And Canada is now woven directly into the center of that plan. SAFE goes far beyond selling weapons. Membership places Canada inside Europe's long-term procurement strategies, its defense coordination mechanisms, and its evolving security architecture. Canadian firms now gain direct access to a defense market already valued at more than 150 billion euros and projected to exceed 1.3 trillion euros over the next decade as Europe rapidly rearms. This is the largest defense buildup on the continent since the Cold War, and Canada has been given a seat at the table. What makes this moment even more striking is how quietly it came together. The groundwork was laid months ago. Canadian negotiators entered discussions with such discretion that even many insiders only heard fragments. SAFE itself was born out of a hard realization in European capitals. The world has become less predictable. Russia's aggression has redrawn borders by force. Conflict in the Middle East continues to disrupt global trade routes. Long-standing alliances are under strain. Political shifts in major powers have made security guarantees feel less certain. Europe concluded that it could no longer rely solely on old assumptions. It needed a defense framework that was resilient, flexible, and insulated from sudden political swings. That meant finding partners it could trust not just for the next election cycle, but for decades. In the end, Europe chose Canada. Not because Canada is the loudest voice or the largest military power, but because it is seen as steady, predictable, reliable. In a world where volatility has become the norm, those qualities carry enormous weight. When Ottawa finally confirmed that negotiations had concluded, SAFE membership stopped being speculation and became reality. Along with it came a clear outline of what Canada could now provide to Europe. Ammunition and artillery systems, drones and counter-drone technologies, armored vehicles and advanced steel, missile components and guidance systems, sensors, robotics, aerospace platforms, and next-generation battlefield electronics. This is the full spectrum of modern defense production. For Canadian industry, this is not just another export opportunity. It is an open door into one of the most aggressive defense procurement efforts in the world. Firms that once faced political barriers or restrictive bidding processes can now compete directly for major European contracts. Defense manufacturers in Quebec, steel producers in Hamilton, robotics startups in Waterloo, aerospace engineers in Winnipeg and Montreal are suddenly operating on a completely different scale. With opportunity, however, came questions. Reporters immediately pressed the government. What did Canada have to pay to join SAFE? Was there an entrance fee? How much would taxpayers ultimately shoulder? Hundreds of millions? Billions? Ottawa's responses were careful and measured. Details would be released in due course. Negotiations had included sensitive terms. That ambiguity fueled speculation, especially after reports surfaced that the United Kingdom had abandoned its own bid when told the cost of entry could approach £6 billion. If that figure was even close to accurate, why had Europe opened the door to Canada while turning Britain away? The answer appears to rest on one word that European negotiators have used quietly but consistently: trust. Canada brings something rare in today's environment: political stability. Governments change, but policy rarely swings wildly. Defense commitments tend to be honored across administrations. Export rules are consistent. Contracts are respected. For Europe, that predictability is as valuable as hardware. There is also a practical reason. Canadian defense companies have spent years building a reputation that often flies under the radar. While attention gravitates toward American giants, Canada has developed strong capabilities in advanced drones, precision munitions, high-end radar, armored platforms, and some of the most sophisticated battlefield sensors available. Europe wanted innovation without political risk. Canada offered both. The economic implications are enormous. Analysts are already calling SAFE the single largest defense opportunity Canada has ever encountered. Production lines that once ran modest volumes could soon scale dramatically. Investment that long avoided Canada's tightly regulated defense sector is now flowing in. Firms that struggled to grow suddenly see demand stretching decades into the future. All of this is happening as global power dynamics continue to shift. Recent international summits have underscored a reality many governments are reluctant to say out loud. The world is no longer moving in a single direction led by one capital. Influence is dispersing. Partnerships are becoming more flexible. SAFE reflects that reality. What is clear right now is this: Canada has secured something unprecedented. A direct role in shaping Europe's defense future. Access to procurement networks that will define military technology for decades. Influence that extends well beyond its traditional sphere. And perhaps the most telling detail of all is how this happened. Canada did not demand entry, it did not threaten, it did not lobby publicly, it was invited. That invitation speaks volumes about how Canada is perceived on the global stage. Quiet, capable, reliable. In an increasingly unstable world, those traits are strategic assets. This moment marks a subtle but decisive turning point, not just for Canada's economy, but for its place in global security. For the first time in a long while, Canada is not merely reacting to global shifts, it is participating in shaping them. Whether Canadians ultimately celebrate this role or debate its cost, one thing is undeniable: the world is changing fast, and Canada has just stepped into a much larger and more influential position within it.